Welcome back to Visited by Voices Live, Thursday's show. I'm joined today by Anna Marie from Until They Are Found, a YouTube channel that specializes in true crime. And most of the shows I do are centered around other folks directly in the horror community. In this case, however, I think that, first of all, I know that our audience crosses over, but beyond that, I think that there's nothing quite as horrific as the material she covers. So while I don't want tonight to be quite as flippant as sometimes we're allowed to be when we're dealing with dumb 70s slasher films or monster movies from the 60s, at the same rate, I think it's important that we look at a different avenue that has inspired so many of the things that we enjoy. So Anna Marie, how are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm all right. So normally the first question I ask on any of the broadcasts is, how did you get into horror? But in this case, I feel like that's going to be a very short answer.
I could give you a little bit of my horror knowledge. It's very, very small, but I could give you a taste.
That's better. That's better than me talking for the next 5 minutes. So go for it.
My dad's mom, my grandmother, I never got to meet her, unfortunately, but she was a huge, huge horror fan. And she would force my dad to go to the theater with her to accompany her because my grandfather would never go. And so my dad went with her. And he told me that he spent most of the time watching the back of his palms instead of the horror movies. But she was a huge King fan, so she read all of his books and went to go see the movies when they made an adaptation. And so she was a huge fan of Christine and Pet Sematary. And so I watched The Exorcist way too young when I was like 12, and I couldn't look at staircases the same for a while. And that's kind of where the horror ends for me, at least.
But, well, the fictional horror ends there.
Yes, absolutely, for sure.
So jumping ahead, at what point did you get an interest in true crime and with missing persons cases in particular?
I've had an interest in missing persons cases first. I really didn't get too much into like true crime, serial killers and murders and that kind of stuff. It was missing persons cases, and it really originated from the investigative guy that does the 411, missing 411. And so I was really fascinated with the disappearances in the wilderness and in the national parks. And I got into like a lot of conspiracy theories that have to do with that. But then the interest started to get more into missing people outside of just people disappearing in national forests and in the wilderness. And that's kind of like when I really started to connect with the families and the victims and have more of a heart space for it rather than just an interest in the mystery. And then obviously that leads you down the road of unsolved murders or murders in general and all that kind of stuff. And so just pretty much the past year, my heart has really, really been in it. And that's kind of when I realized that I need to take some kind of action. And I found that there's a whole true crime community on YouTube that I didn't even know about. And it's just people sitting down and doing a ton of research and presenting the cases of different people that haven't been found in a long time or just went missing, and people who have been murdered and their killers never been found.
So did you discover these other YouTubers before you decided to become part of the community, or was it something that you were pursuing and then you found?
No, I found them before I decided to become a part of the community. I actually found them, I think it was summer of 2018 that I really started to discover just solo YouTubers on their own doing research and presenting the cases. And their videos are, it can be hours long videos. And I found it fascinating. And then their passion and their work was it was amazing. Because a lot of times it'll be, just short videos, 5 missing people in national forests. And you can feel something, you obviously are sad that these people went missing, but it's more of the mystery that captures you. When you sit down and you listen to an hour and a half long video and you get to know the people, their personality, you get to know their families, you hear every detail of the circumstances of how they went missing, that's when it becomes more real and it grips you. And then for someone like me, I just felt like I needed to take action and do something.
Well, it's a great use of the platform. I mean, it actually is kind of, it makes what I do look really actually pretty stupid in comparison, because you're actually going to help people. I'm just trying to build a community of people with the same interests. But
that could be helping people too. I mean, some people need the de-stressor and the entertainment, and that helps people a lot.
Oh, I think I stress people though. That's the problem. But so I've always had an interest in true crime, mostly like most horror fans. It's more the serial killer side of it. Although it's funny that it's very compartmentalized in my head. I've never been a Faces of Death or Mondo video guy. I don't like watching real stuff. But then there's the part of my brain that says, well, if it's fake, I can watch anything though. I'm cool.
Sure.
But the interest I've had in true crime actually came from paperbacks in the 80s. There was an explosion of just true crime paperbacks and taking on these cases that were little known, lesser known, or where kind of the mythology surrounding a case had taken over the reality, such as like the Ed Gein case, which everyone knows the Ed Gein story, but until you read the actual story, you probably believe a lot of stuff that's not true.
Okay.
So I feel like YouTube is kind of doing what those paperbacks did back in my youth today.
Sure.
So what was it? Has there been any case that really surprised you of what people perceive versus what is factual, what is true?
That's actually really funny that you asked that. The latest video I have on my YouTube channel is that to the T, and it was actually my first subscriber requested video, and it's about a man named Kenny Veach, and it's about this internet legend, pretty much this internet sensation, and it was sensationalized by the internet, called the M Cave. And what Kenny pretty much did is he was watching someone else's YouTube video, and Kenny's an avid hiker. He would hike out in the desert, out in Nevada for hours and hours and hours by himself, and he was a pretty rugged guy. I mean, he did things most people won't do out in the desert. And he commented on someone's YouTube video saying that he came across a cave, and the entrance to the cave was shaped like a perfect M. And he proceeded to try and walk into the cave, because he says he walks into every cave he ever comes across. And that as he was walking into the entrance of the cave, it started to make his body vibrate, and he became really, really scared. And he decided not to go into the cave. So the internet sees a comment like that, and they run with it, and they pretty much beg him to go back and try and find the M Cave and go into it and film himself doing it. So after like a couple months of conversation with people on the internet, he decides to do it. He films himself, he posted to YouTube, but he never found the cave. And then people are kind of giving him a hard time. You know how people can be on the internet, they get crazy.
A little bit.
Yeah. They run with things. They just really like pushed him to go again. So he decided to go for a third time, and he never came back. And so people, and he was hiking near Area 51. So this obviously put fuel to the fire and got people to start freaking out pretty much. And I understand it completely. I mean, I love a good conspiracy, and I get where it's coming from, but they sensationalize this cave, and YouTube vloggers would go out and try and find it, and the cave's never been found, nor has Kenny. But what really ended up happening is it no longer really came about the disappearance and the life of this man, Kenny. It became about the M Cave and what the internet had turned it into. And that was a prime example of a case where if you researched who Kenny was and you learned from his family, like what he was struggling with, you would know that most likely something happened to him that had nothing to do with aliens or the supernatural or disappearing into a network of tunnels. Although it's possible, because anything's possible, it's just not as likely as the internet would have you think.
So it's funny because I'm a skeptic in all things in life. Like, I don't believe in aliens. I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in anything that cannot be empirically or mathematically proven, basically.
Yeah.
And yet, I also believe in a concept that we all have a fake safety net that we believe in that may be completely fake.
Sure.
So, in other words, the idea is that we walk around our days and we think we know the risks.
Yeah.
But we live in a chaotic universe. So
yeah, definitely a chaotic world, that's for sure.
Right. So we believe there's an order, and we believe that there's some kind of justice.
Yeah.
But I have this sneaking suspicion that even my own belief in that is completely flawed.
Sure.
So in all these cases, the thing that always sneaks the back of my mind is there's no way to know enough information to ever guess the right solution. Now, you might be able to, if you have evidence, you might follow it to a solution. How hard is it to keep your own philosophies and thoughts out of the videos? Because it's easy to come to conclusions. And I do follow some other true crime bloggers, YouTubers.
Sure.
And quickly I find myself disinterested by the people who think they figured them out, because if the cops didn't, you didn't, pal.
I know. Trust me, I know. And it's super, super hard because when you're behind the scenes outside of your video and you're looking at all the information that you have in your own head, you're like, it had to be this, or it had to be like that, or there's no way that this is related to this or anything like that. But I was actually, when I was doing research for one of the unsolved murders on my YouTube channel, is an unsolved murder of this young girl named Deanna Kremen. I was listening to a podcast that her mom did an interview with, and she was pretty much saying that you can guess all you want. You can theorize until you're blue in the face. But with these things, with missing people cases and with unsolved murders, something always comes out of left field. And you just won't know until you know. And even then, it's still just the police and the investigators giving their best theory with the evidence that they have. And although they will find people who are absolutely guilty, it's only between the person who committed the crime and the victim who knows every single intimate detail. And most of the times, unless it's recorded, we won't know as the public ever. And I guess that's another part of the mystery, is why I think a lot of true crime and unsolved missing persons cases and unsolved murders fascinates people. Because at the end of the day, it's always going to be a mystery unless you have some kind of recorded evidence as to what happened between the victim and the perpetrator.
And that, I think, is why the horror and the true crime community actually converge so neatly.
Sure.
Because I think horror is about morality and mortality. And so is true crime ultimately. Yeah. And both have a certain rubbernecking appeal as well, which might not be pleasant, but it's there and it's in all of us.
Yeah, it is. It's very true.
So you find yourself drawn to these cases. Has there been a case that you've looked into and decided not to do for any reason?
No, not yet. Honestly, not yet. It might come along if I have a subscriber request something and it just doesn't feel appropriate, or I can't find enough information. But honestly, I don't think, even if it was a missing persons case that only has a flyer, if someone's requesting it, they're requesting it for an intimate reason, or they're very genuinely interested with it. So, I mean, I would do it, but there really hasn't been a case that I've come across that I'm afraid to look at or tackle or touch, honestly.
So your channel is at this point building its fan base and its viewership. Sure. And it's in a really good place for as little time as it's been on the air. You're really building quickly and deservedly. When you get to the point of monetization,
yeah,
YouTube is notoriously fickle about content.
Very, yes, especially with the true crime community.
Yes. Well, any violence, period.
But
it's funny because even sexuality is not really under the microscope that violence is at this point.
Yep.
And certainly obscenity isn't. So
no, some of the YouTube channels are out there unbelievable that they're able to make the amount of money they do with their horrid content. Pretty much is how I see it. It's,
you want to really scare yourself? Turn your VPN on, set it to someplace like Slovenia, and
oh god,
YouTube is a completely different thing out there.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
I don't recommend that, but
okay, what?
You might want to do it for a moment.
Okay.
Again, safety nets, right?
Yes, safety nets.
Falsity.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So obviously growing the channel is your primary concern. I'm not suggesting that money is really what you're looking for out of this, but at a certain point, YouTube will promote videos based on the biggest channels out there.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you plan on balancing between, the most compelling cases and the cases that are not going to cause you the most problems down the road? Because I could see those not necessarily complementing each other.
I mean, and this is the thing with the true crime community, as far as monetization of the videos, I knew going into this that it was most likely a lot of videos are going to get demonetized because of the nature of the content. And with the different true crime YouTubers that I follow, I hear almost every single video. It's like, this video is going to get demonetized, or my last video got demonetized, and they have different forms of making money off of their content. So for me, at this point, it's not something that I'm consciously thinking of, like, should I cover this case because it'll get more views, or should I not do this case because it's a little known case? Like I said, when I first got into missing people. and Unsolved, and it truly did become about having my heart in it. And I spent a lot of time trying my best to put myself in the victim's shoes as much as possible, and to think what it would feel like to either go missing and have no one know what happened to me, or to be murdered and have my life taken from me. And so when you're in that kind of headspace all the time, pretty much, I'm not really sitting there looking at cases going, oh, should I do this one so I can get more clicks? I mean, the one I did with Deanna Kremen, it's a 25-year-old unsolved murder from Boston. And it only got a couple hundred views, but that's at least a couple hundred people who put their eyes on it, who now know about her or remembered her. And I mean, I did a video on this young man named Matthew Anfelt, and I spent weeks talking with his mother. And for me, that to have that experience, to talk with her and now know that she's there and I'm there for her, that's just, you just don't think about money when you're in that place. You just don't.
And that's the right place to be.
Yeah.
It might not be an easy place to be, but it's the right place to be.
It's not, because it's a lot of work between the amount of research that, I mean, I'm holding myself to a high standard of research, and then the filming process, which you're pretty much being the script writer, the filmer, the editor, the light setup, the person on the camera, and then to edit it all down and get it published. It's a lot of work. And I understand why people want money when they do YouTube and they get big. I understand the desire for monetization and the desire for a Patreon and to get sponsors. I completely understand. But just at this point right now, I'm not there in the headspace yet. I'm not going to say that I haven't thought about it, because that wouldn't be truthful. I have thought about it, but I'm not picking and choosing cases based on the views that I would get.
So, and I applaud all that. And I suspected all those answers, and I just wanted you to be able to be public with it.
Sure. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity.
On a platform that was not your own, because sometimes people feel that you have to watch how much you talk about yourself, because it can be self-serving, right?
Sure, absolutely.
But I think it's important that people knew that you were in this for the right reasons.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So another thing that I always wonder with, especially missing persons in particular, is, and I don't know if you've ever thought about this, is there a certain percentage of people you think just run away from their lives, just abandon where they are and go forward? And that's the biggest mystery, and probably the hardest one to figure out.
I think it's a very small percentage. I really do. I don't think that it's most of the cases at all. I think some of those cases kind of stick out like a sore thumb. You can kind of tell. But most of the time, and this is one of the most frustrating things that I notice with a lot of these cases, is that's what police will say from the beginning, is this person most likely just ran away. And a lot of the times they'll say that with young kids in their teens, because they'll be like, oh, they're teenagers, they're emotional, they how to fight at home or fight with their boyfriend or their girlfriend, and that must mean that they ran away. And always, I always see the family will push back, and they'll be like, absolutely not, this is out of, this is not the typical behavior of my son or daughter. This is not what's going on. And it's frustrating to see when police don't get it from the jump. So no, I don't think most cases are runaways at the core. I think there definitely are people that would like to just drop off the face of the earth. But I feel like a lot of those times, those kind of people have baggage that causes them to go there, and you could probably see that in some kind of trail in their life, and that would stick out and be profound. So you could be like, yeah, this person probably wanted to get out of town and not ever be seen again.
Yeah, something like obviously spousal abuse or something in their background that would make it
debt.
The motivations would become a lot more obvious.
Yes, absolutely.
But I guess that leads to the other side of it, though, that there's in murder, because I guess that's really what we're talking about, though we kind of skate around that word a lot in these conversations.
Yeah.
There's kind of two types of murders. There's the murder between people who know each other and those who don't.
Yes.
And while I'm not saying that everyone who kills someone who they don't know is a serial killer, or they definitely are a sociopath, but it kind of leads you to believe that the police would catch more, or at least solve most of the cases where it is interpersonal.
Yeah.
So it sort of suggests, and I think that's the scariest side of this whole conversation, is that it suggests there's a lot more independently operating killers out there. People who do this for reasons that either mental illness or sport or some weird social conditioning that we're not aware of.
Yes, I would like to be aware of that social conditioning so we can learn about it.
I might want to send you a book. There's a very infamously a church in air quotes church in California. It was detailed in a book called The Ultimate Evil. Might be a really fascinating read for you.
Okay.
It might be a big distraction too. So I don't know. But so what's your take? Do you think there's really that many thrill killers operating? Because these are not a small number of cases.
No, they're not. Thrill killers, honestly, I don't think that's a majority of the people who commit murders. I think that most of the time, well, not most of the time, but a majority of the time when someone is found murdered, it's by someone they know. And it might not be a loved one. It might not be someone they're directly associated with every single day, but it's someone that they've at least crossed paths with, or that the killer is aware of them. I mean, it's, you have obviously your crazy serial killers, and this is the thing. A lot of the times they get so hyped up. I mean, people have such a fascination with serial killers. And just earlier, I was just reading an article talking about people that are kind of pen pals with serial killers in jail. And I thought, what a horrible thing, because all you're doing for that person is you're pretty much justifying the horrid. Validating and pretty much being like, I find interest in this so much. Not in a way of I'm interested in the victim and what happened to them and seeking justice, but I'm interested in you and your mindset. And I somehow feel that there's something cool about writing you. I mean, I thought that was horrible, but so you do have those crazy kind of people out there who are thrill killers. And I mean, that's just a whole psychological breakdown. That's insane. I don't understand. I don't understand how anyone could be like that. The emotional high that these people get from committing such violent acts. But I think a lot of the time with murders, it's most of the time someone that the victim knew. And a lot of the times it can be, a passion crime where there's a lot of turmoil within these people's lives and someone just breaks and they end up doing the unimaginable and they end up taking the life of the person that they're close with. And other times you have a combination. The person knows the victim from just everyday community life, and they're also sick in the head, and they have these terrible fantasies and these terrible things they want to see fulfilled. And they pretty much they're predators, and they find the weakest link and they find a prey and they make their move, and most of the time it doesn't end up good. But your whole point of like people or the police not catching the killers as much as we think they would, unfortunately, it's a lot of the times it's bad police work. And if you will come across that in so many cases when you start really digging deep into unsolved murders and missing persons cases. It's a lot of the times, it's unfortunately, and it's terrible, but it's the police that just don't do their job properly in the very beginning, which is the most crucial time, is to get everything together in the very, very beginning. The first 48 hours, I mean, everyone's heard it. First 48 hours is the most important time. And a lot of times it's lost. And that's why people don't get caught quick enough or ever.
And of course, the workload never ends.
It never ends.
If you don't get it while all the resources are devoted early, you're just not probably going to get it.
No, yeah. Completely underfunded police departments. They literally don't have the manpower. They don't have the resources. I mean, you have where they keep all the evidence that some of them are so disorganized. Like you wouldn't even believe the places, the way that they store their evidence, the way things are kept. A lot of times it's just they're not funded properly. They don't have enough manpower to do the proper work. And I ran into that issue with the case I did on Matthew Anfeld. I mean, he disappeared, and it took a week for the police to get out to the last place he was seen with dogs to try and pick up his scent. And you're not going to get
a little late there
after a week.
If you do, the best you're going to do is find a body. That's the only option there, right?
Right. And yeah, and it's his mother, over and over again, talked to me about her frustrations but she didn't come from a place of being like, the police suck kind of thing. It's just more like they're not funded properly. They do not have the resources available to them that they should in order to conduct these cases, the investigation properly, in order to find these people quickly. I mean, they can be found.
And I'm going to apologize to everyone out there because I'm about to say something that's going to be interpreted as political. And I don't mean it. I don't mean it that way. I really don't. But people know that I'm a libertarian. I honestly believe that the problem might not be funding of the police. It's when police are distracted by so many things that are on the books that they're trying to prosecute, that the resources get eaten up by crap that does not hurt anyone, but
Sure.
is technically illegal. We could
Sure.
actually help resolve these cases and even be preventative in cases of like high crimes and crimes that have victims.
Yeah.
I just think we need to completely reorganize what we already have before we just throw more money at a situation.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, I agree with you.
Off the soapbox.
No, I completely agree with you. And I think a lot of people see that. I mean, a lot of people who have family members who went missing are doing a lot of the work that you would think the police would be doing. And with Matthew's case, talking with his mother, she just said that her detective's hands and the police's hands are tied in so many different areas that you wouldn't even think would be an issue. I mean, and I get it because it's a double-edged sword. You know, you have to protect the rights of property owners or people that are innocent until they're found guilty. But at the same time, all she wants to do is find her son. So she wants every single avenue walked down. But the police can't do that all the time because of the laws and regulations that are put into place. And then a lot of time it has to do with going down the chain of command, and you have to listen to your superiors, and it might be frustrating for the foot soldiers, the guys on the ground, the guys walking the streets, when someone in the office is telling them, hey, like, you can't do this, or hey, you can't do that, when they're just trying to find their child, or they're trying to find someone who killed someone. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating for everyone.
Yep. And I'm sure, it doesn't help if it becomes the blame game, then no one wants to get even near it, which is exactly the biggest problem.
Yep.
So there's a couple questions and comments that I want to throw at you from the chat.
Sure. Sure.
Because I don't want them to get out of range.
Yeah, that's right.
And I had one up and now it's gone. There we go. All right. So Take the Ring says, I'm from Delphi, Indiana area. Do you have thoughts on that case? I don't follow a lot of true crime. What is the common outcomes of cases like that, or chances of them being solved at this point?
Wow, that's crazy. I've just spent the past 2 weeks so heavily involved in the Delphi murders of Abigail and Liberty. I just filmed that video today. So I have a lot of thoughts about that case. I have probably going to be over an hour-long video of that coming out sometime next week. The thing with that case, and this is my honest opinion, my personal opinion, I think the police know exactly who did it. But I think that because of who the killer is and how he dealt with the crime scene, and he knew what to do and what not to do, they are having such a hard time being able to prove it without a doubt and know that they'll get a guilty conviction in court. Because it's not about just knowing. You have to have the proper evidence. And I think with the guy who committed this crime, he's intelligent. I think he was calculated. I think he planned out a lot of the details. And I think that's why they're having such a hard time nailing him, even if they know in their heart who did it. I mean, this case, I can't put into words how I feel about those two girls. So I would just highly recommend that you watch the video, because I go into a lot of detail. I did a lot of research on that video. And so that should be up sometime next week if you want a deep dive into the Delphi case.
We'll be watching.
Cool.
So this next comment I'm going to put up, I want to reframe it from how it's presented, because I think there's a healthy conversation and an unhealthy conversation to be had from it, and I want to make sure we do the right one.
Let's stay healthy. Yes.
I will read it as put, but I'm going to comment on it before I want you to answer.
Okay, sure.
It's from T-Bob79. He says, "Surely you're validating the crimes by keeping the crimes alive." That the wording there is a little pointed, but what I think the issue behind it is, I think, legitimate. I think that if we're dealing with decades-old serial killers who have been caught and incarcerated to a certain degree, like Natural Born Killers suggested in '93, you do make superstars out of the worst human beings possible.
Yes. Yep.
In the case of missing persons, and I think that's where you're going to probably go with it, you're just trying to get resolution to the case. We'll worry about the inadvertent fame later after we have resolution for the families left behind.
If there's even fame that comes out of it, honestly, I mean, if there's even fame that comes out of some of these smaller cases that still deserve the same amount of attention that what the media has deemed to be bigger cases that get a lot of media attention. Every case is just as important. I do say that a lot in my videos, but honestly, with that comment, I do agree with that, because when I go and watch some of these true crime YouTubers and they're going into 4 or 5 part series on Jeffrey Dahmer or the Zodiac Killer or anything like that, you are in a sense glorifying and validating these terrible people's crimes. I mean, there's some of them that are so absurd that it blows me away that so much attention has been given to these people. So I agree with that completely. I don't think you'll see on my channel any kind of, deep dive into serial killers or anything like that. What my channel is really focusing on is the unsolved. So the fact that justice hasn't been served for murder victims and people's loved ones are missing. They're out there without any kind of resolution found. And if it so happens that, when you find the person who's responsible for any one of these crimes, if they somehow become famous, I guess you could say that in some way my video could have contributed to that, but that's definitely not the angle that I'm coming at. No way.
I think that the unintended consequences in this case can't be the forefront of the argument. They just can't be. Otherwise, is it better for the crimes to go unsolved and the person to have gotten away with it, or is it better for them to be behind bars potentially, but have experienced some validation and some minor celebrity? I have my opinion on the answer to that. I don't know.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think the crime should absolutely be solved and they should go behind bars. And a lot of the times, what will happen is there are certain states that have laws in place where the killer or the person whoever committed the crime can't make a dime off of any kind of book or movie or anything that comes out about them. I know that there are some states that have those laws in places. So even if they get 5 minutes of fame where their name's out there in the media for a little while, it's still better for them to be caught than families go decades and decades without knowing what happened to their loved ones, because that's a different kind of purgatory that I can't imagine. It just must be horrible.
I agree.
Yeah.
It reminds you every day how fortunate you've been. I mean, I've been the victim of minor crimes, including minor violent crimes, but I've never. Yeah. But when you see what people have to deal with,
oh God,
it makes you thankful that you live the life you live.
Absolutely, it does. Absolutely, it does. Yep, that's a huge driving factor for me too. How much?
So, Jess Graham says, "How much of missing persons do you think is part of human trafficking?"
I think a lot is. I really do. And it's interesting too, because it's something that's coming into the forefront and mainstream. I mean, the hashtag Save the Children is huge right now. And I've always thought for a very long time that hundreds of thousands of children go missing in this country every year. And it's not a coincidence. It's not something that, these kids are just wandering into the woods and never being found again. There's something behind it. And so, yes, I think a lot of missing persons cases has to do with human trafficking, because at this point in 2020, human trafficking makes people a crazy amount of money. And unfortunately, that's always the motive. And so when there's a lot of money to be had, there are a lot of people willing to jump on the bandwagon and be a part of it. And that's why the missing persons rate is just going up and people are having a hard time finding their loved ones. It's sad. But yeah, I do think a lot of it has to do with that.
There's a big argument to be made that secondary crimes are the biggest contributor to missing persons. Human trafficking certainly falls into that, but even the war on drugs creates an underbelly. A lot of people working in that industry under assumed names. Prostitution, because of it being illegal, same thing. People working under assumed names, they go missing. It becomes harder to even tabulate them as missing persons because the cops might be handed a name that can't be traced to a real person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the tactics are becoming more and more powerful every day. I mean, these people seriously think out ways of getting their victims to come with them. And it's crazy the lengths that they'll go to and these crafty things they'll come up with in different ways of luring people and luring kids and teens with them. And a lot of it has to do with social media. And that's wild.
That was on my notes.
Really?
So I'll just jump there. So there is a community for everyone to belong to online. And some communities are very helpful, like you mentioned that the horror community, for instance, gives people a sense of companionship and
Sure.
a way to validate their interests.
Mhm.
And I think that's a really positive thing. Unfortunately, that's true of criminals as well. It's also created a world whereas the criminals can follow police activity pretty damn closely.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And that creates another level for them to kind of hide behind, to stay ahead.
Yeah.
Do you have feelings about this type of personal media and crime? Is this something that you've looked into?
I mean, as far as the killer being, or as far as someone who's committed a crime being able to follow a case online or on social media, I mean, it's a good thing, and it may be a bad thing, because with the question earlier about the Delphi case, I just spent a lot of time researching that case, and I even went on multiple Facebook groups that are dedicated to this case, and they pour over every single detail you could think of. And so, sure, if you were the person who committed this crime, you could hop onto any one of those Facebook pages and see every single thing these people are talking about. But as far as the person who commits these kind of crimes, all the way from human trafficking to murders to just simply kidnapping or anything to do with drugs, it falls on the police's shoulders, the investigator's shoulders, to know what information they can and cannot release. And they have to use their own smarts and their own experience to decide, if we release this information to the public, it'll be helpful. If we release this information to the public, it'll be detrimental to our case. So, I mean, and it's tough. It's tough for the public to trust. It is. It's tough for the public to trust law enforcement. So many times they prove that they're untrustworthy. But it's a good thing to have social media in place where people can talk and come to different theories and come to different conclusions, but what they think happened in the case, share different information. Because that's where I found a lot of these small details in the Delphi case, was people who are close to that case and in that community knew things that weren't going to be on your average, mainstream media article. I think that's powerful. And sure, anyone who commits a crime can go and see what's going on, but there are definitely things that they won't know of because they're things that will never get out to the public, and that's on law enforcement.
On a related issue, Jacob asks, do you think that the media should refuse to put the identities of mass shooters out into the opening after they've been caught? Some feel this emboldens them.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely a good idea to not showcase their face over and over and over again, to validate them and to give them a ton of airtime and attention. I definitely think that's a good angle. I think that at least they should be put out there, their name publicly, so that people can get an idea who they were just involved with, and maybe they can read different signs of that. But they could look back at that person and be like, hey, he was, showing this or acting like this or saying this or doing this and changing his behavior. And it could be a learning lesson for people down the line. But to just plaster this person's face on the media and talk about it until you're blue in the face over and over again, sure, I definitely think I can see why, it would give them some kind of validation and make the next person who wants to commit a crime like that be like, look at how much attention I could get from doing this.
So I think that it's a tangled topic, because
it is.
On one hand, I never support censorship. I never support telling a private company or any person what they can and cannot espouse, or say, or explore.
Yes.
I think that's not the role of the government, and I think that leads us down some really bad pathways.
I agree with you completely.
But it would be nice if the media had a sense of what the healthy position for them to be in.
Yes.
The same way we expect, like, your local gas station not to be, just pumping fuel directly into the soil.
Sure.
We should be able to expect our media to understand what would be healthy for the society. And that there's going to be difference of opinions on that. And that's a conversation to be had. Yeah. But I do think there comes a point where if someone goes in and commits a horrific crime specifically for the fame, the media as a whole should understand that there may be a responsibility to watch how that coverage unfolds.
Absolutely. I agree with you completely. Yeah, they don't have that kind of sense of humanity in them as the media, as big media anyways, to be able to have that line of critical thinking and to be able to be like, hey, maybe we shouldn't make this guy super, quote unquote famous for the next however many days we're going to showcase his face. Because I agree with you. I think people who are deranged in the mind, who want to commit some kind of heinous crime, will look at that and go, well, this guy just got a ton of attention. Someone's about to write a book on him. Why can't that be me? And that might lead him to actually commit the crime.
Sure. And we can't put ourselves in that headspace to ever really understand it.
Right.
So knowing that, we have to rely on someone to have our back. And big media in general, even big online media, seems to be failing us there.
Absolutely. I would agree with that.
I think that's why, again, this use of the platform is so important to get regular voices out there about everything in our lives, not just the important stuff, the stupid stuff too.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've had our lives run by Hallmark, if you think about it, and that needs to end.
And that's why people are really, really gravitating to YouTube at this point. I mean, I was just having a conversation with someone on my email, one of my subscribers, saying that they got rid of their TV. They don't watch TV anymore. They're just on YouTube solely because they like, and it's just everyone on YouTube, most of them. I mean, you obviously have your big YouTubers who we know aren't there in a genuine sense, but mostly everyone on YouTube is part of the real authentic human experience. And I think that's why we're all here, because we gravitate towards that, because you can see on reality TV, it's all scripted. You can see on the news, it's the same thing every night. It's fear mongering. You can see on these new sitcoms that come out, it's just not relatable. But when you click on a YouTube video and you just see an average Joe and an average girl sitting in front of a camera, just talking about their daily lives, about whatever they're into, about true crime, about horror, you have an audience that can relate to you. And then they like you for your personality. They like you for who you are. And that's awesome. And you build a really good community on this platform. I mean, I love it. I absolutely love YouTube.
Yeah, it's the democratization of voice. It's really the first time since, I guess, CB radio, where people could actually get their voices out there kind of unfiltered.
Yep.
Which is why we got to be careful that it remains unfiltered.
I know. And it's, I think YouTube's having a little bit of an issue with that. It's not that bad, but it could get there.
Yeah. And it's so easy to cheer on when a voice you don't like gets struck down. Right. But that's when we need to get loudest, because we can't have it be the whim of some corporate machine that's looking at advertising dollars. We know where that leads. We've seen it before. So DJ Donnelly has a question. It's a little bit off the beaten path, but because he's the reason you're on this show tonight.
I know. You're awesome. Thank you so much.
What do you think was the real reason behind those mysterious clown people in 2016 or whatever it happened?
Oh man. Yeah. The real reason, honestly, I don't know. I really don't. I mean, you could say that they were just a bunch of punks trying to scare the crap out of people. But the thing is, I mean, I feel like if they were trying to commit a crime as far as like trafficking children, they wouldn't be so noticeable. They wouldn't have dressed up as clowns to then be seen by the media. Honestly, I think it was a publicity stunt put on by a group of people that were just trying to scare people. I think it was a bunch of people that thought that they could get away with something this crazy, and it seems like they kind of have, because I don't know personally, maybe I'm wrong, of anyone's identity that's come out connected to the clown people. I know they were in, like, a lot of them were in the South, North Carolina, I think, had some incidents. But I think that it was probably just a bunch of whacked out people doing a really whacked out thing, because I didn't see any kind of crimes that really came out of it. And if you're trying to commit a crime and not get caught, dressing up as a clown and showing your face around the public is definitely not the way to do it.
You wouldn't think.
No, definitely wouldn't think that.
Like we said before, there's a community for everyone online, and I have a feeling this was the national internet version of a flash mob.
Yeah, it could be. It could be a really scary one, because I don't like clowns at all.
I don't have a problem with clowns. So Jacob states, going back a little bit in our conversation, that sex work should be legal. If it were, you'd see less prostitutes, sex workers being killed or assaulted.
Yes.
That's absolutely true, but it's beyond that for me personally. I just don't think I have the right to tell anyone what they can do with either their body or their mind.
Right.
So if someone has decided mentally that they're comfortable with that line of work, and I just don't think it's my place to say.
I agree.
And that said, I consider myself to be I don't even know if I want to go there, but a fairly conservative person about his sensuality. I don't think I wouldn't be partaking. Is I guess
Right.
what I'm saying. But
I understand. I understand what you're saying.
I just don't feel like I have the right to tell someone else what they do with their body.
I agree with you. I definitely think that we don't have the right, but I think there's also, a moral compass comes into play. I think that, you decide what you're comfortable with in life. And I agree with him to a certain point on what he just stated. As far as if it was legalized, I think you would see it done in a cleaner way. And what I mean by that is you'd probably see more facilities in this country pop up as far as places where sex workers could go and conduct their business in a safe environment, where if you're picking them up off the street, or if you're going on Craigslist and you're a stranger to these girls and you're picking them up off of Craigslist and meeting in a hotel or meeting at even these people's own houses, that leaves a lot of room for a crime to happen. And it's funny, I just finished reading this book called The Lost Girls, and I believe it was 5 or 6 prostitutes who were all picked up by the same John, and they were all murdered. And their cases pretty much just went not believed by authorities because of their line of work and the fact that these girls were being picked up in Jersey and in New York, and they were street workers. They were on the streets. And so you already have this, or law enforcement did at least, had this picture in their head of who they're dealing with. When you got to know these girls from this book, you got to know who they were, where they came from. You understood how they ended up in this line of work. The book humanized them. And I think this guy makes a great point as far as if it was legalized, and I know it sounds terrible, but if these women were conducting this kind of business, or men, in a safer environment, I think law enforcement, not us as the public, but law enforcement would have more of a human face to them and would be willing to go more into their cases than they already do. Because the book that I just finished reading, it took them a long time to figure out that these women were murdered and to actually find their body and put the pieces together, because they just brushed them off to the wayside because of their line of work and the fact that they were on the streets.
I'm not big on unions per se, but I think that coal miners should have unions because the work is dangerous and precarious, and there's certainly a dead end to how long you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that sex workers would be in the same boat. I think
Yeah.
that if they could organize, get the criminal element out, so get rid of your that connection between the street pimp and the drug money, and if you can remove that,
Yes.
I think everyone would benefit. I think it'd be safer
I completely agree with you.
absolutely everyone, including the Johns, by the way.
Yes, of course, absolutely, because they take a risk too. I mean, they take a risk too as far as dealing with these women and their pimps, because I mean, a lot of them are extremely violent. Most of the times there's drugs involved. I mean, there's just violence all around. So if it was legalized and they could actually have a legitimate place of business, it would be much better. Which I think Nevada is the only state that has it legalized, and they do have brothels. And I'm not sure about the crime rates in Nevada as far as prostitutes or in the brothels and whatnot, but I mean, it's a start at least.
Yeah, well, there's more scorpions in Nevada than there are people, so that
Yeah,
helps.
seriously.
So going away from sex workers, Big
Sure.
Crack Rock says, I think the reason for the lull in mass killers right now is because they know there'll be a blip at best in the current news cycle.
Sure.
I think too, though, we're in a weird world. We're all socially isolating from each other.
Mm-hmm.
We're just not brushing wings. The
Yeah,
opportunities aren't really there.
Yes, yeah, that's a very good point. I didn't even think of that. That's a very good point. There literally are no opportunities right now. I mean, people aren't going to concerts. People aren't having huge weddings. There are no big functions.
Closed.
The bars are basically closed. Unfortunate for some, but yeah, it's definitely a different world where that kind of crime isn't, and it's weird to say, but it's not a readily available crime for people to commit. So I agree with that comment. That's probably exactly why we're not seeing anything like that. But it definitely given opportunity for other kinds of crime that are just as terrible. It's weird the way things shift.
So Lost Cunningham, Tim asks, Anna, how do you sift through the facts and conspiracy theories on cases? I think he's looking for your technique.
You want my secret technique? No.
That's it. What's the recipe?
I mean, I go through pretty much anything I can get my hands on. A lot of the times with smaller missing persons cases, there aren't that many conspiracies, I would say. But I go through first. I mean, I really do start with the bigger news articles. I'll go there and see what they're saying. And then I'll try and find smaller podcasts. I'll try and find interviews with the families. I'll try and find anything that's smaller than big media to try and get a different voice, a better perspective on who these people were, what their situations were like. And then honestly, a lot of the times, and I think this is a great resource, maybe not for concrete evidence, but to see how the community's feeling, is a lot of the times with missing people and unsolved murders, there will be Facebook groups that people create, and people in the community and people that are heavily invested in the case will share resources on that Facebook page. A lot of the times they'll share articles that I would never have been able to find just by a quick Google search. They'll share different information they've come along on their own. I mean, you can do a lot of digging on the internet, and I could spend hours and hours and hours doing that digging. But the beautiful thing about these Facebook groups is it's all right there condensed into one platform, one group. And I can find a lot of really good, really solid information there. So yeah, I mean, I pretty much just start big media. I go to podcasts. I try and look for YouTube videos. I go to Facebook groups. I try my best to get my hands on anything I can. And I will reach out. I mean, I've reached out to almost every single family that I've covered so far. And sometimes they want to talk, other times they don't. And I understand both sides completely. I mean, it's not easy to talk about those things. And I'm a stranger. They don't know me, so I understand why they wouldn't want to talk to me. And in other cases, like Matthew's cases, his mother was very receptive, and we talked for a long time. And I feel like if she ever needed anything, she would reach out to me, or she could reach out to me. So there's information to be had from actually talking to the families of the victims as well.
And that has to be somewhat uncomfortable to even start that conversation.
It is. I was very nervous at first, to be honest. I was very nervous. But I felt, again, in one of my techniques, not researching techniques, but doing this kind of thing, doing this kind of content and this research, I put myself in these people's shoes. And I said to myself, well, if, I had someone in my family that went missing or was murdered, what would I want? Would I want people to be afraid to come to me and see if they wanted my opinion? And I wouldn't want that. I would want to talk to as many people as possible. So that's kind of how I found the confidence to go and ask, reach out to these families.
How long does it take to do the research on your average case? And I know your answer is going to be it depends, and they're all different. But
yeah,
for your average hour video, what would you say? How much time do you put into that research?
A lot. I spend a lot of time on my laptop. I honestly, if I could, I could spend literally all day researching, because I do like to sift through every detail, and I am trying to hold myself to a high standard of research. So, and this is the tough thing about YouTube and about doing this, is I want to be able to have content out on a regular basis. I want to be consistent, but at the same time, I'm not willing to sacrifice the quality of my video and the research. So if I really wanted to, I would spend weeks researching and come out with hours and hours long video, but then my content would be only 2 videos a week. So I figure with the amount of people that are in the true crime community, I don't necessarily have to have every single detail. I can point people in directions. So I would like my research to take a week maximum and have videos out every week and a half to 2 weeks.
Unfortunately, that's the balance, right? Because YouTube is like consistently getting stuff out on what feels like a schedule is important.
Yes.
To build an audience. But by saying, right, in your, especially with what you do, it's going to take the time it takes, right?
Yeah.
To do right anyway. And I wouldn't want to see you fall down the rabbit hole of some channels I've seen that are, they're basically just reiterating, or even in some case cutting and pasting from Wikipedia.
Yes. I do notice that a lot.
Yeah, it's atrocious. And I think, again, it goes back to why you're in it. Are you in it for the right reasons or the wrong reasons?
Right.
Point where you're looking to Wikipedia to write your script, you're in it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. I'm not willing to sacrifice the quality for cranking out content. And I said that in my welcome video back in May when I started this channel. It's like, if it takes me, a couple of weeks to get the proper research, I want to do the case and the victim justice rather than, crank out a 15-minute video just giving you the bare facts. Because the thing is, you never know who's watching your video, and you could say something in your video that triggers something in someone's mind who could be like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know I had that information. Maybe I should call it in. Or you could say something in the video and it leads the person to being like, you know what, maybe I should come forward. And so I'm not willing to sacrifice the quality for getting out a ton of videos. And I hope my subscribers understand that. I'm sure they do. I mean, the subscribers that I've been in contact with, they're just awesome. They really are, and they get it. You know, I think people in the true crime community do get it. They want quality information. They really do. And that's the most important thing.
Yeah, and the other thing is, honestly, you're dealing with real people's lives. There's real people who've been affected.
Yes.
You got to get it right.
Absolutely.
Get it right.
Absolutely. Yeah, you have to get it right, and you have to present it in a certain way too. It's interesting with the true crime community. It's while the mystery portion of these cases is entertaining and interesting, we still are talking about real people with real lives, real victims, real horror, real terror, real emotions, and you have to do it with a certain conduct, and you have to be responsible pretty much. And that again comes with the quality versus the quantity when it comes to YouTube, at least.
Okay, so let's get not serious now.
Okay.
That was a perfect segue. It was exactly the opposite of your point. So obviously this channel is mainly a horror channel.
Yeah.
What is your feelings about fictional horror films that take inspiration from real life cases? Where's your comfort level there?
I mean, now kind of being intimately involved with these kind of cases, scares me isn't the right word. It's something I wouldn't be interested in sitting down watching as a form of entertainment, because I wouldn't find entertainment from it. I get how people would. I get that people who aren't, deeply invested in these kind of things would be like, okay, I understand that this person was taking creative inspiration from a real event that happened. And that's fine. That's completely valid. But for me personally, at this point, it's not something that I would sit down and watch as a form of entertainment.
Do you think it's easier once decades and decades have passed? So that like a historical case, does that make it easier? Or you mentioned the Zodiac earlier.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, an unsolved case.
Mm-hmm, I know. Yep.
There's some good evidence that perhaps it could be solved, but
sure. Yeah.
it never will be.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But so would watching David Fincher's film about the Zodiac, for instance, would that make you uncomfortable at this point? Or has enough time passed there and the victims' families have all kind of resigned themselves to what's going to be in their lifetime the answer or lack thereof?
If you had asked me that question maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, I would be like, no, I could watch that. That'd be okay. Just because, like I said, I was more interested in the mystery aspect of these kind of things. But after talking with victims' family members and really, like I said before, trying to put myself in the headspace of these victims, although I'll never truly know, but trying to imagine in detail what it must have been like to build up the empathy. I think watching those scenes where someone was killed like that in real life, it would just be kind of hard. It would just be hard for me. And I mean, I'm not saying that anyone who watches it, isn't valid in liking it for certain reasons, for entertainment value and for the creative aspect of, trying to capture the Zodiac and all of his doings and the things that he did. But for me personally, I don't think I'm in that mind space right now with the amount I put myself into the victims' heads that I could enjoy something like that.
That's a fair enough answer. I just want to point out that both Jamie and Jacob have joined your channel.
Awesome. Welcome, guys. Thank you.
I'm going to encourage everyone else in the chat. I did put in the description under this video the link to her YouTube channel. Anna Marie would love to have you join.
Absolutely.
It's a struggle to make a go of it in YouTube. So understand that every time you subscribe to someone whose content you enjoy, even in passing enjoy, you're really doing them a lot of good, because it helps the algorithm pick up and suggest the video.
Yeah.
So by all means, guys, check out what is on Until They Are Found. But also, if even if you just sub and leave it and never look back at a video, it really would help for people who will love what she does to find it. So there's no downside. Please support the channel.
Awesome. Thank you.
So
I didn't see it hit you.
How do you see your channel in a year's time? What do you want to be doing? Do you want to be basically doing the same things, or Do you hope to have widened your approach, or do you have to hope to be doing even deeper dives? Or
Honestly, I pretty much want to be doing the same thing. And I just posted a channel update video where I was asking the people who are already subscribed how they feel about my content, how they feel about the quality of the videos and the length of the videos and how I'm presenting the cases. And I got a lot of positive feedback. And the one thing that stuck out to me the most was that I had someone talk to me about overproduced videos and how it loses its authenticity and it loses its connection with your audience if you're overproducing videos, and if you kind of just lose what you've already started as far as how authentic you are. And so I feel like the quality of the research that I will always continue to do and the basics of just sitting down in front of a camera and explaining the victim's story is exactly where I want to be in a year, because I think it's the best way to connect with people. I think it's one of the most efficient ways to get information across. And I don't want to deviate from that at this point. Maybe years down the line, I would love to work with more professional people or professional businesses that really do help victims, that help families with missing people. I'd love to get involved in that line of work eventually. But as far as my content on YouTube, I don't want to overproduce anything or change the value of the content that I'm giving at this point. I mean, I would like to get better and memorizing things on my script. Sure. I'd love to not have to look down so much and edit so much and do all that. I'd like to get better at research and that kind of stuff. But I think the basics of just sitting down in front of a camera kind of works for this line of content, at least.
so Griffin asks a question I have a feeling that is going to be a very short answer from both of us, which is, what do we both think of the movie Hollywoodland? My answer is I have not seen it.
I haven't either. I'm sorry. I have no idea.
It's a Black Dahlia story, I believe.
Oh,
I've read
okay.
about the actual case, but
Yeah.
my thing there is always with films from about kind of like the fake glamour of old Hollywood and real crime. I was never the Hollywood Babylon guy. I was always the guy, when I read about true crime, it was always the killer that had been caught usually, and kind of like the retracing the steps of what led him there, even more than the killings themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I can talk about the big cases pretty well, but I'm not fixated either by any means.
It's weird. I can't talk about the big cases as well. I've mostly focused on some of the smaller cases. Those are the ones I know like the back of my hand. It's like the bigger cases are so sensationalized that I don't want to give much more validation to them. I don't have too much of an interest in them, especially if they're already solved. And not saying that the victims don't deserve their justice and that there isn't a lesson to learn, but the people who are still missing, the people whose murders are still gone unsolved, the smaller ones is where a lot of my attention is sitting.
And Jamie has corrected me. Hollywoodland is not about the Black Dahlia case.
Oh, it's not?
I'm thinking of something else, and it's not the De Palma film about the Dahlia murders. It's about George Reeves, apparently, the first big screen Superman. That wasn't part of this series.
Okay. Yeah, I have no idea. I'm sorry.
No, me either. Again, once we get outside my comfortable niche of the true horror genre, I get pretty. I get pretty wonky. What? So my old friend Amy has also subscribed to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We're getting it done, guys. We're getting it done.
It's wonderful.
So what's coming up on the channel?
Well, I just filmed a video today, and I covered the Delphi murders in Delphi, Indiana, which was Abby and Libby. They were two very, very young, beautiful, innocent children who were brutally murdered, and they were found on a historic hiking trail. So I covered that whole case in as much detail as I could and could fit into it and find. And so that video will be edited and hopefully will be up sometime next week. And then honestly, I just let my intuition guide me as far as the cases I'm covering at this point. Really, it's all intuition based. And I would love for people to email me with case suggestions. I mean, that would be wonderful. Anything that you feel passionate about or you want to see done, we can get done on that channel. So I really just take it case by case. I don't have a list. I don't have, big plans as far as like all these cases I'm going to cover. I have an idea of things I want to cover eventually. There's some cases that a lot of people have covered. They're not big name cases, but they're cases I've always felt passionate about that eventually I would like to cover. But I'm just taking it honestly day by day with these cases.
And I think that's almost what you have to do. That's how you stay engaged.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And I would just say, guys, if you did just subscribe to our channel after you've burnt through what's already there, I'm sure Anna is more than happy to hear what your interests are and what cases you've come across, because no one person can be aware of all things.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. No, I want your suggestions. And my email is usually in the description box, but my email is untiltheyarfound@hotmail.com. And you guys can email me even just with thoughts. If you just want to talk outside of the comment section on YouTube, I would be happy to have a conversation with you in the comments. I think doing that outside of YouTube is still extremely important too, because conversation generates things. And when things are in motion, things tend to happen, and it can only be good things for these people.
On a very similar note, but much more selfish note, if you guys out there follow any YouTube or anyone in media at all that you think would be receptive to being on my show, reach out to me. Literally, this show tonight happened because DJ Donnelly just reached out and said, "I really love this channel. Do you think you could interview her?" And after I explained that I don't really do interviews, I said, "Well, get me an email address." And by then I was already checking out the channel, but he came through with an email address, and it came together very, very quickly.
Yeah, very quickly. Less than a week.
Yeah. So if there is someone out there that you would like to see on this show, on this channel, just throw it at me. I'm not saying that I'll pursue everything because it has to kind of meet the brand. But as you can see from tonight, I think the brand can go in directions that maybe we haven't seen before. For this channel itself, we will be back on Saturday at 2 p.m. another matinee show. My special guest will be author Sarah Reed. Will be joining me on Saturday afternoon for about an hour discussing her take on the horror genre from the literary side. I know I've had a lot of writers on recently. You guys know it's my soft spot. I promise I'll mix it up more in September, but reality is I want to do my part to keep the written word alive as well. I might have a vested interest in that. So, Anna, how can everyone follow you besides just go to your channel, which is linked below in the description of this video? Do you have any other presence out there that you want to promote?
I literally just started an Instagram account 2 days ago. So there's 2 posts on there. I think I have 5 followers at this point. So you can go ahead and follow me on Instagram. It's just instagram.com/untiltheyare. They, for some reason, couldn't put the found part in there. So it's until they are.
You lost your found? You lost your found.
Yes, ironically, I lost my found. So it's just until they are. And I will have that link below in the next video that comes out. So if you're subscribed and you have the notification bell turned to all, you'll get notified of that video. And then you could just simply go and click on the Instagram link. And my Instagram is going to be more of like behind the scenes stuff. I'll give you guys what cases I'm covering. I'll show you guys the script. I'll show you guys where I research, where I film, and just let you know when videos are coming. And when I'm doing stuff like this, going live with people, or, I'll go live myself on my channel, you'll get to know from the Instagram.
Anna, you're going to have to come back.
I'd love to come back
in a while and give us a talk about what's going on in the channel, and
I would love to.
Maybe we'll deep dive a case and I'll actually do some work.
Sure, yeah, I'd love to do that. That would be a lot of fun. That would be really good.
All right, so everyone else, I have one other announcement coming. After Saturday's matinee, the next show will be on Monday, when I'll be joined by Jonathan Lundy for the great, long promised, long delayed, and definitely going to destroy one of our channels show, in which we debate the merits or lack thereof of Jim Cameron's Aliens. With that, everyone have a great rest of your night. Be good.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Lauren.